quick question. When you first saw the court filing by Paxton, your first reaction?
My first reaction when I saw the court filing was he just basically said whatever the whistleblower said, I did. So he's admitting he's guilty.
Emotions that ran through your head at the time?
Yeah, I mean, the emotions is you sat here and spent months getting ready for a trial. You sat through a trial being told the whole time from a guy you'd really supported for a decade that said he was innocent. All of a sudden he says, no, what they say is true. Just tell me how much we owe because I don't want to be deposed. And so, I sort of felt like, to the whole Senate, it was disrespectful.
Do you feel used?
Look, in politics, I don't know if I would say I feel used, but, I just feel like, he just wouldn't told the truth. We're misled, on that situation. And, hey, look, I wanted to do my job when we went down there for the impeachment trial. It didn't rise to the standard without a reasonable doubt. If this would have come out and he said, what the whistleblowers are saying is true, we would have convicted him, or at least I would have.
Is it safe to assume, and this is all conjecture, that you were sort of one of the few on the outside who may have convicted him if you felt there was enough? Would it be safe to say you were on that spectrum there?
No, I was. I came in with an open mind. I said, look, I'm going to listen to the facts. I'm going to try to put away all the things I've either heard, either from rumors or friendships having worked with Ken in the past. And I'm going to put those aside and focus on what the facts are. And so, and it's tough. It's not easy to do that. But I came in with that mindset. I said, I'm going to be open to whichever way the facts take me.
You voted to acquit. You were one of 16 who voted to acquit. What changed?
What changes when the Attorney General puts a letter in court documents and says, I do not object to any of the claims made by the whistleblowers. That's an admission of guilt. Now, you can come back out and get on X, on Facebook and all this and say, I was innocent. I was just trying to settle this and make it go away. You can't have it both ways. And that's really what it gets down to. You said you're guilty of those charges. Clearly, you don't want to be deposed because you've spent more time fighting the deposition than you would if you had just gone in for 4 to 6 hours, sat down, told the truth, went through this. Taxpayers, if you're telling the truth, wouldn't have paid any money to these whistleblowers because you did nothing wrong. That was always the claims.
Have you heard at all from Dan Patrick? Have you heard from Dan? Well, we'll start there. Have you heard from Dan Patrick at all?
I haven't heard from the Lieutenant Governor.
Have you heard from Ken Paxton?
I haven't heard from Ken Paxton other than, the attacks on social media, which, really sort of makes fun of me for saying I have to go back and get a job. Well, I never figured out how to personally get rich being a public servant. I made my $600 a month, decided I'd served my 12 years. I'm going to come back and work in the family business and make money. And I think that's an honest thing to do. That's really what 30 million Texans do almost every day, is go to work and make an honest living.
He called you a failed senator.
Yeah, that was pretty funny. When you're one of the top-rated conservatives in the Texas Senate, and I was in the Texas House as well, was always ranked higher both than him and his wife. And so I don't know how that makes you a failure.
When he says this is just sour grapes, do you think you're the only one who feels this way?
No, I don't. I think that there's many other legislatures. Look, I talked to a House member who did not vote to impeach, who feels like he was misled in this with this court filing.
Are there people in the Senate who probably feel the way you do? I'm not asking you to name any names. Can you give me a number of Senate members that you think would feel the same way, that they would like to reconsider impeachment proceedings?
I haven't had a long conversation with the majority of them. And so, yes, I've heard from a few. I think they agree with it. They agree with the facts. I don't know if anybody would be real excited to go back and have another impeachment trial. And honestly, part with the letter was to find out if it's even possible. Because we're still in this legislative session, is it able to reconsider a vote taken when you're on the prevailing side, sort of a technicality? or would it have to start completely over with charges filed in the House and then come back through?
Yeah, I guess that is the logical next question. Is there a mechanism by which you could restart proceedings? So it would have to come from the House, is what you're saying.
Well, that's what I'm not sure of. That's what I'm asking the Senate to look into to see if that's a possibility. But obviously, there would have to be a desire there as well.
How badly is there a desire on your part?
Look, I think that's one of the utmost things as an elected official. You have the trust of your constituents. You have the trust of the Texans. And I think they demand that a level of accountability is held. So for me, it's very serious.
Um, Drew, I don't know you, but if you were to look at this from the outside, you're thinking probably, hey, here's an outgoing senator who has a guilty conscience, who is now seeing this as his way of saying, hey, at least I try to fight him. What do you tell people who think that way? And I'm sure you already anticipated people thinking that.
Look, I have nothing to gain from doing that. I think my reputation was just perfectly fine before. I've been touring the district, and every single person I've met has said, hey, we hate to see you go. We appreciate it. We understand why. There's something that people respect when you say, I'm doing it because of my family and my business. They realize that you're a regular human being just like them. So there's nothing to gain from there.
Do you mind telling me what your father's business is?
Yeah, we have a financial services business, wealth management. We help people reach their retirement goals and in their dreams.
The evidence won't change. Let's say things do get restarted. The evidence won't change. The only thing that does change is Paxton essentially does not contest any of this, which could that be considered evidence by itself, or what do you think?
I think that, before the Senate and before the legislature probably would go to pay this, I think they're going to want to know more facts. And I think, whether that's in a committee hearing or depositions, I'm not sure that the legislature has a desire just to write a blank check.
If there's a judgment of the court, do you think the legislature pays it?
Again, I get back to the legislature. I mean, that was part of the thing that came up in this whole process to begin with, is they wanted more facts and details before they were going to approve to pay $3.3 million of what took place.
How are your constituents receiving what you're asking for?
The ones I've heard from, all believe in transparency and accountability. And so, mine have been perfectly fine with making sure we get to the truth and what that is. And did somebody cross a line? And even if it's not to impeach, they want to know that, so that if it goes back to, as you say, into an election, that they have the full facts ahead of them.
If I were Ken Paxton, what would you tell me?
I'm sorry, what'd you say, Joe?
If I were Ken Paxton, what would you tell me?
I would say, Ken, you either need to go on record, sit down for a deposition, answer truthfully, and if you don't want to do that, you should resign.
Can I switch topics for just a second here?
Sure.
How do you feel? Do you feel the governor should defy the U.S. Supreme Court order on the border ruling?
Look, I think that we absolutely need to defend our border. It is a travesty what Washington is allowing to happen. We're seeing that across not just the entire state of Texas, but we're seeing it across the entire country. And when you hear Chicago complain about 18,000, when Texas is dealing with millions, it's the problem we have. We're not a country if we don't have secure borders. We're a country of immigrants. We need a good immigration policy. We need immigrants to come to the United States in a legal manner to fill some jobs that aren't, and when unemployment level's low. But yes, we need to make sure that it's done legally. And if that's putting up barricades, razor wire, and that, we need to do
it. Any parting words, Drew? Anything else you want to say on the Ken Paxton?
No, I'm good. I think we covered it all.
I appreciate you. Thanks for talking with us.
I tell you what, I have one more probably.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we'll see coming up in this election cycle is, Ken Paxton's endorsing a slate of candidates. And I'm endorsing a slate of candidates pretty well all on the other side. And I think when voters look at that, they're going to say, do I take somebody who's been a conservative state senator, or do I use somebody, that had a donor give him a fake Uber account to cheat on his wife? And which one of those means more to that voter? I think I'll feel very successful once the elections come.